We're back with Walter Dods, retired chairman of the board for BancWest Corporation and First Hawaiian Bank. So before break, Walter, we were talking about building your team and, listening to their ideas. At any time, if you feel that the person may not have as good of idea as yours, do you go against it, or do you just listen and say yes and take it into consideration?
No, I'm one that believes in participatory democracy. At some point, I'll make the hard decisions if I have to make them. But short of that, I love good, open dialogue. I love argument. I like the group to put it around the table and throw it up against the wall, see if it'll stick or not. So I'm not one to say, no, that's not the way to go. I've never been that way. Ultimately, we have to march down the same line. But I found over the years, if you get a good group together, you end up with a better idea coming out of it over time. It has to be massaged a little bit sometimes quickly, sometimes a little longer. But ultimately, everybody starts to see the direction it's going to go, and that's a better way to make it happen.
For the community type events, your involvement is massive. I mean, you've been at leadership positions of just about every major nonprofit organization in town. How do you determine which ones you're going to get involved with? How do you determine the amount of time you're going to spend and how much resources you're going to spend toward that? How did you determine that?
Well, that's one that I've not done a very good job at. I have a hard time saying no. I've been involved in community affairs my whole life. I love it. Sometimes I spend 40 hours a week doing it, so it's not been easy on the family, and so I'm not one to give you really good advice in that, although I tend to get involved in things that I like, although I have been involved in some art and culture kinds of organizations, I prefer the social services side because I came up from the streets.
Wait, so you spend 40 hours doing community work and then also your time at the bank?
Yes. During my career, I worked long hours every day, weekends, got very, very involved in the community. But a funny thing happens, and I tell all of our employees, if you want to make it at First Hawaiian, you have to go up 2 tracks at the same time, your business track and your community service track. We're not interested in people that are just one or the other. There's room for them, but if you want to make it to the top or high up in the organization, you got to go down 2 tracks. And amazing things happen. If you spend time in the community with pure thoughts of helping the community, believe it or not, your business will benefit dramatically by it.
Can you expand more on that? How do you feel that, or how have you seen working with the community and, being involved in business? How did that help both?
Well, I watch a lot of young execs that I mentored over the years, and I'm mentoring now people in the community that have asked me for help on a volunteer basis. And what I have found is if you only go up the company track, you just learn about your company. You don't develop a network. You don't see the greater community. You don't know what's happening. But if you go up the other track, you become instantly, because the community badly needs leadership. Before you know it, you're a director of some organization, you're a vice president, and then you're the president of some little community organization. And you develop leadership qualities because it's much harder to motivate volunteers than it is an employee who you can threaten with a no raise or fire. But when you get into community service, you got to lead by example, and you got to make sure the troop follows the way you're going. And so the executives that take that community service seriously become so much better executives within the bank. It's amazing.
So you think that they should take the time to get involved in their community. What about the younger people that are so focused on their businesses or their companies because they do want to make it to the top? When should they make the time?
Well, you have to make the time. Of course, you have to balance things off, and we can talk about that a little later. But it's time well spent, and now I particularly sympathize small business people who have to be their own accounting departments, their own personnel departments, their sales department, and clean the bathrooms and everything else. So I understand it's a little harder, but you should still stake out some time. Maybe it's 10% and not 50%. But you should find a way to get involved because it's going to help your business. You're going to meet a lot of people that will be lifelong friends. It just pays off, and I've seen it time and time and time again in my own organization.
So total hours between business-type work and community-type work, what was your average hours per week?
Well, I've never added it up, but just figure out that I started at work at 7 in the morning, and I'd probably end up going to a meeting almost every evening. Try to keep Sundays alone, but I was involved, 12 to 15 hours a day for many, many, many years.
Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more on Greater Good Radio.